Live from the House of LeMay Makeup and Dressing Room.
Here comes Amber. Stop what you're doing. Here comes Amber. She's just doing what she can. Here comes Amber. Cue the spotlight. Here comes Amber with 2 drinks in her hand. The matriarch of fashion, secrets to her glasses, you can't look away. Ask her, does she do it? There's really nothing to it. She's got that feminine game. If you have a party, or if you're feeling naughty, call up the House of LeMay. Here comes your favorite gal. Here comes your queen. Here comes the talk of town. And we're live tonight. The music starts playing. It's time for cabareting. And we're live tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, please turn off all cell phones and get ready for your host, Amber LeMay.
It was just like 3 weeks ago when we had Pride in Americas was down here. We celebrated with our friends in the city of Fort Lauderdale. They did a beautiful progress flag right in front of the gay beach. And within 2 weeks, trucks went over it and defaced it. And then just since then, it has again been defaced. You know, and it's I can't say that.
Hello there. That was a surprise. Did we have a glitch there in the technology? I don't know. Anyway, we'll get on to news briefs. What do convicts, blobs, and my least favorite state have in common? They're all a part of this week's news briefs. A convicted felon run for president of the United States while serving in prison? Now, you may think I'm asking for a former resident of the White House, but no, I'm talking about someone else, someone who we all met 3 years ago around this time, Joseph Allen Maldonado, better known as Joe Exotic, the Tiger King. He made the announcement from prison by way of his social media that he would be running to be the Libertarian Party nominee for president in 2024. Even though he's currently serving a 21-year prison sentence following conviction in 2019 on multiple charges, including 2 counts of hiring hitmen to murder wildlife activist and former Amber Live guest, Carol Baskin. He was also convicted of killing tigers and selling them across state lines. There's no legal barrier to a person running for president from prison. During the 1920 presidential election, socialist Eugene V. Debs famously ran while imprisoned and won more than 900,000 votes. No stranger to politics, Mr. Exotic first ran for president of the United States in 2016 as an independent and then for governor of Oklahoma in 2018 as libertarian. I think his new campaign may have the same result as those others. Well, you know, now that Florida legislators have proposed a near total ban on abortion, a bill banning girls talking about their menstrual cycles in school, banning math and social studies books because of their woke indoctrination, an attempt to close Black fraternities and sororities, protecting Confederate monuments, seizing trans kids from their parents, the don't think gay laws, and all the attacks on the drag queens, maybe they can start worrying about serious matters. A big orange blob. Again, no, not that one. I'm talking about a pile of seaweed that is twice the length of the United States that is headed for Florida's west coast. And this is really going to be a problem for all of Florida. The seaweed, known as, and I'm not making this up, is called sargassum. And because of its berry-like bladders, air bladders, forms large floating masses. And these orange blobs are smelly and possibly harmful and will pile up to 5 or 6 feet across beaches and dampen the tourism season. The gas emitted from the rotting algae, hydrogen sulfide, is toxic and can cause respiratory problems. The seaweed also contains arsenic in its flesh, making it dangerous if ingested or used for fertilizer. So, you people in Florida, be thankful that you can't take your kids to drag shows, not have control over your own body, be able to learn about people different than you, and just know that your state's inaction on environmental issues will just give us libtards one more reason not to visit your state. It's rumored that this Tuesday may be the day many of us have been waiting for, the day the twice impeached one-term former president is indicted for one of his many crimes. Get the popcorn ready. And that's this week's news briefs. All right, let's see what's happening behind the scenes. Come on in.
Dude, guess who's pushing the buttons tonight, bud?
Okay, well, it's Rusty. So we did a little technical difficulties. Has that been fixed to run?
Yeah, bud, you want to run that clip now?
No, I want you to run the clip.
All right, bud, here we go.
It was just like 3 weeks ago when we had Pride of Americas was down here. We celebrated with our friends in the city of Fort Lauderdale. They did a beautiful progress flag right in front of the gay beach. And within 2 weeks, trucks went over it and defaced it. And then just since then, it has again been defaced. You know, and I can't say that we didn't see it coming, because as soon as all the posts went out about it being there and people celebrating it, people started to troll it and say, like, let's go ruin the flag, which is just sad. And I think that's sort of the environment we create when we put out legislation that tells people that LGBTQ people are bad.
We need to stop legislating hate. Well, I serve on the Health and Human Services Committee. The committee voted to advance the bill that bans gender affirming care for trans youth. And I told my committee members that if they were going to advance it to the floor, that it was going to be problematic and I was going to slow things down. And so the next morning I was being a woman of my word. One person can filibuster a bill by themselves. If my colleagues want to pass legislation that is our job, like economic development, the budget, then we're going to have to make some choices.
Lucy and I really appreciated having us here at Fairfax, Vermont tonight. For the past 3 years, I've done a live stream talk show. I've talked to drag queens from all over the country. And a lot of them, they were doing something similar to what we are doing here tonight. In a small town in New York State, where the Proud Boys of Harvard threatening you as you enter the building. So I just want to say how proud we are that we live in a great state like Vermont, where freedom and liberty do exist. And thank you for having me. Yeah, that last clip was from last Saturday night when Lucy Bell and I went to Fairfax, Vermont, a very small community in northern Vermont, very rural. We were asked to host this benefit for a young boy who needed a dog to help him service with his autism. And there was all people from the community there doing singing and dancing. We were the MCs, and we couldn't have been more welcomed. And it's just it was just so nice to have that feeling that I'm afraid other people around the country just can't have right now. So I want to thank the people from Fairfax for welcoming us and making us appreciate even more why we live in Vermont. So that was very good. All right, Rusty. Well, I know Russell's not here tonight because he has some family issues to take care of, but thank you for filling in. And, you know, he'd want to talk about the bustiers. And that's one thing that I want to talk about. We've been on for 3 years now, and we've never charged you anything. Now, if you were going to see one of our shows in a theater or in a bar, we'd charge you probably $10, $15, maybe $20 to see our show, but you haven't had to pay anything. And plus you have to buy drinks. So you've been sitting at home watching us for free. So just show that the Venmo address right there. And if you could send in $5, $10, that would really help us come along. Like I said, we've been here for 3 years, and we've got some technical things that we have to purchase. So we'd really appreciate that. So join us on the Boosty A's Club. Now, Rusty, do you have a caption, a picture to us? Put a caption on.
Dude, I got a whole lot of stuff to go over tonight. We got.
Well, no, let's go for the caption. Let's go for the caption. Let's go for the caption, Rusty. Rusty, let's go for the caption.
This photo is right here, bud. So send in all your comments, and Cousin Craig tonight is going to be running the captions. So at the end of the show, he'll put up our favorite captions, the ones that are funniest, bud. So make sure to be funny.
So make sure you put caption into the comments and then make a comment about that. And you know, we've got the great guest tonight, Trae Crowder, the Liberal Redneck. But we've also got clips from, well, I think we've got a film clip from Rusty. We've got one from Rocco and one from Dwayne Scott Cerny, and of course, Boog and Suge at the end. So it's a full packed show tonight. So stick around. So Rusty, we'll talk to you later on. Thank you very much.
Sounds good, bud.
All right. So, yeah, Trae Crowder, I could go on and on with an introduction about him, but I'd rather just show you a clip of what he's done.
They're the liberal rednecks. They like cornbread, but sex they care way too much but don't give a fuck. They're the liberal rednecks that makes some people upset, but they got 3 big old dicks that you can suck.
I'm a different kind of redneck, sure, okay, but I mean, dude, I love drinking beer, love football, love my truck, love my mama, and my mama, guys, my mama cooks the best crystal meth you ever had in your life. So good.
Hey, y'all, I think the tragic train derailment in East Ohio is an appropriate indicator of the current state of this capitalist husk of a country. And the company behind it all, Norfolk Southern, they came out the gate handling things with a comically apathetic and heartless approach. They initially had planned to give all the affected townspeople a $1,000 convenience fee. To be fair to them, I imagine watching everything you've ever known go up in chemical flames is probably pretty inconvenient, but the number they landed on is very telling. Hey, y'all, my beloved Tennessee's really upping their shame game lately because on top of a horrific abortion ban, Tennessee has become the first state in the union to pass a bill banning drag shows. Now, it ain't been signed yet, but it will be, and ostensibly it's aimed at preventing lewd shows in front of children, but it's worded so vaguely it essentially makes it illegal to be trans or in drag in public. Well, kiss my ass. This is, of course, being done under the guise of protecting the children. It started with Drag Queen Story Hour at the library, which combines two things these people absolutely cannot stand: anything queer and kids learning.
Wow. We've got more to talk about. Trae, come on in.
Hey, hello.
Trae Crowder. Oh, this is such a pleasure to talk to you. I've seen you. You've been to Burlington, I think you said 3 times. I know I've seen you at least twice, maybe 3 times. You're going to have to come back. So
can't wait. Would love to come back. Love Burlington. Always have a good time there.
All right. So tell me, when, where, and how did the Liberal Redneck come into being?
Well, like as far as the character in the show goes, or the videos, like I started doing stand-up comedy in 2010 in Knoxville, Tennessee. And somewhere in that time frame, I had this bit I would do, which was basically the setup was, people think this accent makes you a conservative, idiot. And I know the reason why is because that's the only way they ever see this accent portrayed. So I'm going to start doing the opposite. I'm going to go out in public and be just as loud and crazy and redneck acting, but I'm going to say a bunch of really liberal stuff to sort of balance the scales, right? And then I would just say a bunch of really liberal stuff in a super redneck accent, basically. I was doing that on stage, and it worked. Like, it did really well. And I was telling some friends of mine, I think I want to make a video series, like an online video series based around that idea. And they all were like, that's a great idea. You should totally do that. But at the time, I was like, well, I'd have to buy a nice camera. I'd have to learn how to edit. I'd have to do all this. I thought it had to be fancy for some reason. And then in spring of 2016, North Carolina passed that transgender bathroom law. And I saw this video that was going viral on like right-wing Facebook. Like I saw people that I went to high school with sharing it and stuff. And it was this preacher in North Carolina standing in the woods for some reason, just preaching fire and brimstone into his phone, not being funny at all, no wiener jokes in sight, just being, apocalyptic, and about the dangers of, these animals in the bathrooms with our baby girls and that old type of thing they do. And I saw it, and it had like 10 or 15 million views on Facebook. And I was like, it's like a light bulb went off. I realized, like, okay, if this thing is the thing I'm trying to make fun of, then I don't need a fancy camera or any of that stuff. Like, that would be a mistake, really. I should just do it exactly the same way he does it, just go out, take my phone and holler at it. And so once I had that epiphany, I decided to start doing it. The first one was about my home state of Tennessee making the Holy Bible the official state book. And it got like 70,000 views, which for me was incredible. Yeah. So I was like, all right, I'm going to keep going. And the second one I made was about the aforementioned transgender bathroom law. And that one went like crazy megaton viral and got like tens of millions of views and stuff and changed my life overnight. And then I've been doing that and touring and all, and just been like a professional comedian and everything ever since. So that's kind of how it happened.
Now, we want to encourage anyone who has questions for Trae, just send them in the comments and we'll answer them later on. So, Trae, what were you doing for a living when this started?
I was a contracting officer for the U.S. Department of Energy in Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
Explain that, please.
So I had gotten an MBA in college, which people are like, that's neither liberal nor redneck. But the only reason I got it, I had no real interest in business. The only reason I got it was because I knew I wanted to try comedy, and I thought I would just get the degree that I thought gave me the best chance of getting a job where I wasn't waiting tables while I tried to be a comedian. And I just happened to get that job. And so the federal government doesn't really do anything itself. It contracts with private businesses. And so I put out requests for proposals and awarded and administered contracts on behalf of the federal government. Basically, it's just like a desk job, paperwork stuff. But I had a top secret security clearance and that whole thing.
Now, in that clip we showed, you mentioned your mother cooking the best crystal meth that you've ever had, or something of that nature. Tell us more about your upbringing.
Yeah, well, so for the record, my mom, the first time she saw me do that, or she may have saw that clip on the internet or something, she texted me and she was like, that's really funny, but honey, just in case you don't remember, I didn't cook meth. I sold pills. It's very different. That's literally what she said, because she did sell pills. She went to jail for it a few times. And she was an addict herself. She's in recovery now, but her and my dad split up. I was mostly raised by my dad for the aforementioned pill reasons. And I grew up in Clay County, Tennessee. It's a very small rural area in Middle Tennessee. There's no traffic lights, no McDonald's. I graduated high school with like 60 kids. We were the biggest class our school's ever had. Normally it's like 40 something kids in a graduating class. It's extremely middle of nowhere. I grew up there. My dad was like a kind of rock and roll type dude. He had like long hair and he smoked weed, and he not in the house, but he did. And he loved like David Bowie and David Lynch and all this stuff. And he into like music and art and foreign movies and stuff. He owned the video store in my hometown, Crowder's Video it was called. So I grew up in that. And and he had a brother. My dad passed away 10 years ago, but his brother, my Uncle Tim, is an openly gay man, right? And I knew that. My dad explained that to me when I was probably 9 or 10 or something. And so I've always attributed that to, I had a kind of different sort of upbringing for that place. Like, for example, we didn't go to church at all. My dad didn't go to church, so I didn't go to church. So I grew up very a-religious. I was always defensive about gay people and stuff, about homophobia and that type of thing because of my uncle. And I just sort of drifted ever leftward, I guess. Anytime something would come up as some kind of political subject, I would always find myself on the other side of the like prevailing attitude in my hometown, which is
so growing up, did that create a conflict with anyone if you spoke those feelings?
Kind of, but not as much as you'd think, because the other thing was I was like the smart kid in my town, which is being the smart kid in South Tennessee is no great feat. The bar's not all that high, but I was like the smart kid in my town. And so like people knew, like everybody kind of knew, like when I would say stuff like that, they'd just be like, oh, that's just how Trae is. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, they sort of just like brushed it off because I was like sort of the smart weirdo or whatever, I guess. Like they didn't, they just kind of took it for granted, kind of. But also the other thing is, like, people may not realize or remember, but like it just was nowhere near as charged back then as it is now. Like people would have disputes or whatever, you get into like a debate or something, but like it was nothing. Like, most people in my hometown were apolitical, really. Like, you don't talk about religion and politics at the dinner table. Like people didn't really talk about politics all that much, so it wasn't as big of a deal as you would think, but still I definitely never really fit in there, for sure.
And now what town in Tennessee was that? It's
called Celina, Celina. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And did you stay around there before you moved away, or how long did you live there?
Until I graduated high school, and then I moved the grand distance of 40 miles up the road to go to college in Cookeville, Tennessee. It's a lovely school, a Cal college called Tennessee Tech University. And I went to college there, got an MBA, then moved to Knoxville when I got that job I was telling you about earlier. Started comedy in Knoxville, moved from Knoxville to LA in 2017.
So you contribute your dad being a-religious and having a gay uncle to kind of bend you towards the left.
Yeah, that's what I've always thought. But you saw those other two dudes in the clips you showed me earlier. That's
Yeah.
Corey and Drew, my frequent
Yeah.
collaborators, and they tour with me. So you saw them doing stand up too, doing my best friends. That's what I've always thought about myself. But they both were brought up like heavily in the church, and they say the exact opposite thing. They say that they've always felt like growing up heavily in the church was the thing that pushed them in the other direction. You know what I mean? Either out of spite or contrarianism or whatever. So, I mean, you know, who's to say?
Very good. All right. We have plenty more to talk about now. Audience, if you have any questions for Trae, make sure you put them in the comments. But right now, we're going to take a little break, and we've got a clip from our good friend, Rusty Peen. Let's watch that.
Dude, welcome to another edition of Thinkin' and Drinkin'. I'm Rusty Peen from the Beaver Pond Doing It Yourself Club. Because if there's one thing I know about, it's doing it with yourself. Dude, in Beaver Pond, we celebrate the beaver. And not just for its soft, warm, muffy fur, but because beavers make castoreum. And dude, castoreum is an extract that's used in all sorts of food and perfumes. Dude, it's a natural flavor that's in almost everything, from ice cream to anything that tastes like raspberries. And dude, you know how you get it? It comes out of a beaver's butthole. Google that shit if you don't believe me. Beaver Pond is one of the leading producers of anal beaver gland extracts. First thing you gotta do is anesthetize the beaver, so we do that by drop kicking it in the throat, bud. Yeah? Okay, bud. So then in order to extract it, what you gotta do is you just massage the beaver's castoreum gland. Don't worry, dude. It's totally humane, and the beavers love it, bud. Yeah? Finally, what you're left with is a delicious castoreum flavoring, bud. Sweet castoreum, bud. Dude, it's also the leading ingredient in my line of latest perfumes, ambergris. Dude, it comes in a platinum vodka bottle so that you can smell like a fresh drag queen after putting on a show, bud. Ambergris, now available at the Amber Live store. Dude, that's all the time we have for today on Thinking and Drinking. I'm Rusty Peen, and I'll smell you later. Y'all?
Let's get back with Trae Crowder. Okay, Trae. You talked about that one YouTube episode that you did that blew up and started your real career. How did that come about?
Well, I mean, you know, like I said earlier, I watched that, I saw that preacher guy, and it sort of, and you know, like I said, the light bulb went off, and then I just did it. And then that one in particular, I remember going to work the next morning, like I did it like on a Wednesday evening or something. I go to work on Thursday morning, and I'm sitting in a meeting, and like my phone like starts getting hot in my pocket, like literally hot. Like I was like, I thought it was going to, you know, that was back when phones would just blow up every now and then or whatever. And so I was like, oh no. And I kind of freaked out, and I pulled it out, and it's because like, it was just like an endless wall of notifications, you know, like social media notifications that were popping up nonstop. Ran my battery down, everything. My phone, I mean, it died by like 10 a.m. or something like that. And I have this day job, so I had to like sort of still do my job that day. But of course I was extremely distracted, and like I get home, and I mean, I put that on my like personal Facebook page, right, which has a limit on number of friends you can have, which I've met almost immediately, and had to make like a fan page and all this stuff. And it was crazy. And I started getting, from that, I got a book deal. I got my first TV development deal. And
okay,
let's
back up. So who contacted you? Who was some of the first people big that would contact you about this? How does that happen?
Well, I actually had, because like I said, I'd been doing stand-up since 2010. I had come to LA in like 2015 or something and did some shows out here. And a manager, a represent, like a reps, we call them. You got managers and agents. A manager saw me performing and asked to represent me. So I had a manager living in Knoxville. And so she shepherded a lot of that, but like Simon and Schuster, the publisher, someone who worked there, like got in touch with her because I put her information on all the pages and all this stuff. But also I just got like a Facebook DM from a like senior vice president at Warner Brothers, and I saw that, and I would get I got a message on Twitter from this other TV producer who I ended up working with. So just stuff like that, it was wild.
Now, why would or not why, but Simon Schuster, did they think you wanted to write a book or that you could write a book?
I mean, hey, you tell me. I thought the same thing. I was like, I always thought, I was like, if I ever write a book one day, that'll be one of the last things. You know what I mean? A memoir looking back, something like that. Like I never thought a book would be the first thing. And yeah, I thought the same thing. It's like, well, Corey and Drew, the guys I mentioned earlier, we had a blog at that time because, again, this was 7 years ago. It was kind of the tail end of blogs being popular, but we had a blog that wasn't all that popular initially. But when I went viral, people started reading it and stuff. And it was called Our Sunday Best. And so we had some like writing samples because we'd had that blog. And so they were just interested when I went viral. Then they looked at the writing samples and we had phone calls with them, and we had to put a book proposal together, including a bunch of samples. And through all that, they said, well, I guess they can do it. But yeah, I mean, I was also at the time, I was like, y'all just let anybody write a book? Okay. But it turned out.
Now, how long did it take from that day when your phone blew up in your pants until you quit that job?
Well, when the book deal was finalized, that's when I decided to quit. And then I went viral in April, I think, and I did some shows and stuff, and I feel like I was gone by May. So I think by early May, I put in my 2 weeks notice. Then I stayed for 2 more weeks. Then I left towards the end of May, I think. So roughly a month, 2 of which was, after I put my notice in. So probably 2 to 3 weeks before I told them, hey, I'm quitting.
All right. So you got notice, you got the book deal, you got Warner Brothers contacting you. How did that change you personally?
I mean, I don't know. I'd like to say that it hasn't really changed me much at all. And I would like to think that people who know me personally would agree. I still feel like I'm pretty much the same guy. I've definitely never let it go to my head because people got to realize, look, don't get me wrong. I'm grateful, love what I do, all that. But this industry is it will humble you repeatedly. I've never had a problem getting too big of an ego or something. Cause it's 95% rejection. If people aren't aware, it's mostly just being told no over and over and over again, or, implicitly you're not good enough for this over and over and over again. So it kind of keeps you in your place, at least for me. I know some people, get out of control or become monstrous with it, but I never had that problem.
I've read your resume where you've appeared on all these national TV shows. Tell me some of those experiences about meeting those people for the first time.
The craziest one was definitely the first time I did Bill Maher, because I was supposed to do Bill Maher in September, October of 2016, and it airs live on Friday nights. On Tuesday or Wednesday, I was in Raleigh, North Carolina for a show and a tour date, and I got a call and they said, we're very sorry, but we have to bump you from the show this week because Bernie Sanders wants to come on. Right. So I got bumped for Bernie Sanders. Okay. And I was like, good call. I didn't blame them, pretty easy choice. But they told me we're going to rebook you. And they did. And because of that, it actually worked out better for me because when I ended up going on, when I got rebooked, it was the Friday after the 2016 election. So it's 3 days after Trump wins. And the mood was, you remember what that was like. Everybody on the left was just dumbstruck and terrified and what just happened. And it was wild. And so it was this huge show. And there was David Axelrod and John Legend and A lot of other great people were on the show that night, and I had, it was just surreal. Also, a part of how it works. And they told me before, it's like, listen, it's the way we like to do it. The first time you're going to meet Bill ever is when he introduces you and you walk out on stage and sit down. And I was like, okay. And like, I had watched that show for a long time. You know, I'd been a fan. I'd always wanted to do that show. And so it was, I mean, it's like a kind of like a fever dream looking back on it. You know what I mean? It was pretty wild just because of the context, especially. And then actually, weirdly, the third time I did Bill Maher, they found out live on the air and announced it live on the air that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had died. So like it was, I've had some pretty crazy experiences on that show in particular. Pretty wild.
All right. You were on The View. Tell me about
Yeah.
The View.
Oh, I thought The View was a great time. I loved it. There was this, that's another one. It's like, me and Corey and Drew were on The View together because we were talking about our book that I mentioned that we wrote. And, because that had Whoopi Goldberg. I got text messages. People were like, Whoopi Goldberg just talked about you on The View. Whoopi Goldberg just like brought up our book on The View. She was just reading it. And it didn't get set up or nothing like that. She just saw it and was reading it and talked about it on The View and how great it was. And so that's why they booked us. And so that was wild. And the publisher, because it was to promote the book, the publisher like flew us up there and put us in a hotel room and stuff. And we just tore the mini bar up on the publisher's dime, and they were none too pleased with that whole thing. But the experience was fun. I remember Corey got some good lines in, like we got some laughs, and everybody was super nice and sweet. And in the commercial break, I don't know if they always do this, but in the commercial break, they actually let some people in the audience like talk to us. It's like I said, I don't know if they always do that or what, but there was this gay guy from Alabama, like in the front row in the audience. They gave him the microphone. And he started like crying, talking about how great he thought this was and how much he appreciated all this stuff. And we like went down the audience and hugged him and stuff while he was crying and all this. So there's like a lot of emotional stuff going on too. So that was also a really cool experience.
Any bad experiences on national TV?
Well, I mean, I guess you could certainly qualify that Ruth Bader Ginsburg experience has been kind of a bad experience. It definitely, yeah, but I mean, it definitely derailed the show. It was hard to know like what to say or do after that. You know what I mean? So yeah. That's the only one I can really think of. I mean, I'm trying to call to mind. I feel like I've mostly gotten lucky with that type of thing. Everything else I feel like has worked out pretty well.
You moved to California. What prompted that decision?
The TV stuff, because I'm married and I have 2 sons. And at the time I went viral, they were like 3 and 4 or something. They were little. And I was touring a lot and all this. And then I signed this TV deal. And back then, pre-COVID, if you're going to develop and sell a show and then write a pilot and all that stuff, like you got to be in LA. Like if you go into pitch meetings with network people and stuff, like you got to be in the room, right? So like I was flying out here all the time on top of my touring. And I was just like, this just doesn't make sense. Like I just need to be out there. That way I can go to these meetings and go home that night or whatever. My wife was all for it. She loved, because she's like me, she's a big liberal from a rural town in Tennessee. So like she was all about moving to California. So it just made sense. Now COVID changed all that. I mean, I pitch shows now, you do it on Zoom and everything like that. They still haven't gone back to the other way. All those things that I felt like I had to be out here for, they pretty much do those remotely now anyway. So it feels like it's less necessary to me now, but I mean, I like it. It's super expensive, but I still like it. So we're good.
What have you pitched? Can you talk about that?
I mean, well, this is another thing. I don't know if people understand. I mean, how would they understand if you're not in it yourself doing it? But like, if you see a show on TV, right, on a network, let's just say it's ABC. Let's say in the fall, ABC puts on 4 new comedies, right? Probably more like 2 or 3. But let's say they put on 3 new comedies in the fall. Okay. Of those new comedies, they probably had filmed 8 to 10 pilots. So they filmed 1 episode of each show, right? 8 to 10. And of that, they picked 3. Of those 8 to 10 pilots, they probably bought like 50 shows and paid the people to write the script for the pilot. And then from those 50 scripts, they picked 8 to 10 to film, right? And of those 50 scripts they bought, they probably heard literally hundreds of pitches, right? So like your odds are astronomically against you. Like I've heard people say all the time, it's like, it's a miracle anything ever gets made, really. Like only the very, very, very top people can just like say, I want to do a show about this. And everybody's like, okay, let's do it. Like most everybody else, it's a dogfight to get anything made. And so like I've sold 4 shows, and they were like, as far as what they were, a kind of standard stand-up comedian gets a show, you know what I mean? Seinfeld, Everybody Loves Raymond, King of Queens, like that type of thing. It was just like a sitcom based loosely on my life, centered around me. I also, though, sold a show to Amazon and none of these got made, is what I'm saying. None of them ended up getting made. I sold a show to Amazon with some really T-Bone Burnett, Callie Corey, and Tom Shulman, who are they're all Academy Award winners. They're incredible. And it was about a country band that started unwittingly being used for propaganda purposes. So that one was kind of different and wilder and would have been a lot of fun. And now I'm, pitching some other stuff. I've also pitched cartoons. I've pitched other things. Like I'm constantly doing that, constantly pitching and writing and trying to get something on there. It's just hard. Like, for example, like Kenya Barris, the guy that created Blackish was his 12th pilot. He sold 11 shows, none of which got made before he got Blackish on the air. And so I've got 5 so far that haven't been made. So I'm about halfway to where he was at. So, it's just a process.
Is it frustrating?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I mean, like if you sell a show, you sell it. So you get paid to write it and everything. You're not like working for free the whole time, but like, and it's also a cool experience, even just doing all that, like even just doing that, I enjoy and it's fun. But yeah, it's super frustrating because you get attached to these things, as you get into them, develop them, and you write them and everything, you get like, you'll fall in love with an idea for a show or something. Like I've like mourned some of these shows that didn't get made, because like you start to see them in your head and everything and see how they could be great and all that stuff, So, it's hard for sure, but it's also just like, it's just the way it is. It's just all in the game,
And then you watch some other show and you go, oh my God, They put that on the air
all the time. You can't help but do that. Yeah. I try not to do that. Cause I also know that like having done all this myself, I know that like, even when you see a bad TV show or a bad movie, there's a lot of really talented people who tried really, really hard to make that good. And it's just like, there's an alchemy involved. It could have been studio interference or whatever, but there's like a million things that can derail a show. But like nobody wants to make something bad. Everybody out here is trying to do the best they can. You know what I mean? And so like that's also sort of changed my perspective. I'll see plenty of things that I don't like, but I'm just like, all right, well, it's a misfire or whatever, but I'm not vitriolic about it or nothing. Cause I understand it's just hard. It's hard to get it right.
Well, it sounds like you have a very good and kind heart, Trae.
Well,
I might be a little bitter by now if I were you.
Well, give me time. We're on year 7. So we'll see, around the decade mark, 10, 15 years.
All right. I believe we have a question from someone in the audience. Craig, can you put that up there? Trae, is that vehicle you broadcast from, van or SUV, real or just a backdrop? I wondered that myself.
That is my 2012 Jeep Wrangler. It's very real. It's got a soft top on it. You could tell from looking back there, it's not in great shape. We need to put the hard top back on it. But I used to a long time. Those first videos I did them in my backyard, but I moved to LA, and my backyard in LA is super California. I got a lemon tree back here. Like it's not redneck at all. Right. So I experimented with I came inside for a little bit. I didn't like that as much. And then I realized like, well, most of the people you see like ranting at their phone, that not comedians, people that are just pissed off about something, ranting at their phone, they're usually sitting in their car when they do it. Right. So I was like, well, I'll just do that. So I just literally walk out to the driveway and sit in my Jeep and do it. But yeah, it's very real. I drive that. If I'm driving somewhere, I'm driving that thing. So yeah.
Oh, that's very funny. Good question. Thank you very much, Malta Scott, for asking that. All right. We've got more to talk to, Trae, but we've got a few things we've got to take care of first. Thank you, Trae. We'll be right back. All right. Let's bring Rusty back in. Rusty.
Dude, great show so far, bud.
Oh my God. How much fun is Trae Crowder?
Dude, he's all right, bud.
We got more to come. We've got Dwayne Scott Cerny. We've got Rocco. We've got Boog and Shook, and another segment with Trae. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but I just want to remind everyone to contribute to the Bustiers Club. If you contribute $25 or more, you got a sticker. $100 or more, you get a sticker and a magnet. Or $200 or more, you get a sticker, a magnet, and a mug, dude. Dude, it's just like coming to see one of your LeMay shows. So show us some love. Send us some cash to RJD Pro at Venmo, because we got to keep the show going and pay prescriptions, and so that we can keep here.
$5, $10, it all adds up. We'd appreciate very much. And let's show that picture one more time for the caption.
Yeah,
I haven't seen many captions yet.
Dude, write in your caption. Label it caption and send it in to Cousin Craig, and he'll post it up at the end of the show with all your witty banter that you have to say, bud.
I think so. All right. Well, thank you very much, Rusty. We'll catch you at the end of the show. But right now, let's find out what Dwayne Scott Cerny has to talk about.
Hey, I don't mean to be Dwayne Downer here amongst all this comedy talent, but I have to comment on a critically developing news item. As many of you know, the 16th largest financial institution burst this week. Of course, I'm talking about Silicon Bank. Now, I'm no financial expert. All of my money's tied up in cash. But I've researched what happened to those who still think cryptocurrency is how you pay for your funeral expenses. Apparently, thousands of customers have been injecting their deposits into Silicon Bank, only to have them manhandled inappropriately, something Amber has had to deal with her entire life. I have this on Betamax, but I digress. It appears that someone in the Titterverse leaked this information. Then it appeared on Instamammogram. Then suddenly there was a run on Silicon Bank. And you know how runny silicone can be. For years, the entire silicone economy was supporting the faces, breasts, hips, and butts of the famous and not so famous. Kim Kardashian's buttocks alone was holding up much of coastal California from sliding into the ocean. Who knew? Not any of the white guys I know. In hindsight, if I may use that word, this was a ticking time bomb inside a Rubik's Cube inside a Jack-in-the-Box. The toy, not the restaurant. And don't order the Oreo shake. It's 1,100 calories without the defibrillator. Commonly called filler, Michael Jackson came within a nose of nearly titling his famous album this very word. As everyone knows, Silicon Valley is located between two enormous hills that come alive with the sound of music, especially disco music. The explosion of Silicon Bank would be the Chernobyl of breast augmentation and vice versa. Suddenly, the world was flat, just as Marjorie Taylor Greene had predicted in her ghost-written memoir, I'm Not Crazy, It's Me, now available on Inaudible. Shockingly, billions of dollars of silicone was withdrawn from Silicon Bank in a matter of hours. Some people using industrial breast pumps, toilet plungers, or anything that sucked more than the film Shotgun Wedding. It was then discovered that the officers of Silicon Bank absconded with huge bonuses before the feds skidded into the scene. This is called bottom feeding or skimming from the topless. Thankfully, the Biden administration stopped the leak by sliding in truckloads of Flex Seal sealant and Dolly Parton's training bra. It would be the greatest disaster since the Exxon Valdez transitioned into Exotica Valdez and started accepting Bitcoin tips for her naughty bits. Unsurprisingly, we have since learned that Donald Trump, a man who's been manipulating silicone since puberty, was behind the very deregulation of silicone and Vladimir Putin's ego. Next week, I'll update you on the problems I've had with Siemens Bank and why I can no longer have children who will work for me for free.
Okay, thank you, Dwayne. Trey, come back in. Trey, Tennessee. What's up with Tennessee?
I don't know. You tell me. It's a nightmare now. I mean, it's like, feels like it gets worse every day. I feel like they got an inferiority complex with Florida and Texas or something, because it feels like Florida and Texas are in a crazy off, you know? It's like, oh, we're the craziest assholes. No, we're the craziest assholes. And every now and then Tennessee's like, hey, we ban drag shows. We're crazy assholes too. And they're like, yeah, we know you are, Tennessee. Just pat us on the head. It didn't look, it was never utopic or anything or
Howard Baker. Howard Baker was your senator, and he was a decent human being.
No, I know. I mean, I don't know how this will sound to people, but if you compare him to today, like when I moved away from Tennessee, the governor was a Republican. His name was Bill Haslam, right? And like he was like he was just like a regular Republican, not a crazy version. You know what I mean? Like he was just like fiscally conservative or whatever. But I remember like when he was the governor, Tennessee became the first state in the country to make community college free for all Tennessee residents or whatever, pretty socialisty sounding to me, but like that we weren't lunatic. I mentioned that bill to make the Holy Bible the state book. Like he vetoed that bill. Like we used to be pretty reasonable as far as southern states go, and they've just gone fully off the deep end like so many have. Now we got, Marsha Blackburn, Bill Lee, Haggerty. I mean, these people are monsters. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's the same thing that's going on in a lot of red states around the country, but it's very, very disheartening as somebody who's from there, for sure.
I can only imagine. All right. So tell me your thoughts about Joe Biden.
I mean, I like Joe Biden. I feel like he's done pretty well. He's done some things recently I don't understand or appreciate. Like he let a bunch of SNAP benefits expire, which plunged a lot of Americans into poverty, took a lot of food stamps away from a lot of people, a lot of older people in particular. And, he's busted some union strikes and stuff like that, which I don't like. But like he's like in a lot of ways, in terms of economically speaking, he's like the most progressive president we've had since FDR. And really, like he's, which, we got a pretty low bar in this country. But also, I just like I don't like worry about Joe Biden. Do you know what I mean? Like when somebody like Trump's in there, you're actively worried all the time about God knows what might happen. I don't do that with Joe Biden, which I've come to really appreciate. And I think that he's like, I genuinely believe that he's at least a somewhat like decent person, like decent human being, which is also something I've come to appreciate with politicians. So, I like him. I'd like to see, I mean, I consider myself to be like a pragmatist, I try to be a realist, and like what they call it, the Overton window in this country is just like pretty far to the right, meaning like, I'd like to see some like real progressives at high levels of politics, but there's just not very many of them. And the country itself is, like what passes for like just basic liberalism in this country would be like moderate or right in the middle in a lot of parts of Europe and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So like, as far as that goes, I like Joe Biden. I also would like to see some, somewhat younger people.
Do you have anybody in mind?
Levels of office. I mean, not that. I mean, like I love AOC, obviously, like she's a hardcore progressive and a young person and everything. And but in terms of like realistic candidates in the near future, I mean, no, I don't know what to tell you. But and like also, even so many of even our Democrats are like neoliberalism and stuff, like they're still in the pockets of the banks. They're still super capitalists. Like we're just such a capitalist country that even a lot of people on the left are that same way. They'll bend over for the banks and stuff, which I hate. But, it's just kind of is what it is for now. I keep telling myself like, the more young people, get older and get engaged, because I've heard I'm an older millennial, but I've read that millennials are the first generation ever to not be drifting rightward as they get older. Right. Which I don't think is surprising. Used to what happens, like people get older and they get like good job and a house and money and all this stuff. And they'd be like, now they're conservative all of a sudden because they want to keep more of their money. But like we're not. Millennials are like, we got roommates until we're 30. They're moving back in with their parents and all that stuff. Like none of that has happened for us. So like, I don't think it's surprising, but either way, I think if that holds, then they say progress happens one funeral at a time. Like, I think that could actually end up, working out that way as we go forward. That's what I tell myself anyway.
What do you think the reaction is going to be with all the anti-abortion laws that are being passed? What's going to come of that?
I don't know what will ultimately come of it, but I mean, the reaction's been, pretty substantial already. Like a lot of women and a lot of activists are really pissed off. There's been a lot of protests and stuff. And then, like in Kansas, which is a red state, but they have that way their laws work. It's just like a straight referendum on laws themselves. So when they put their anti-abortion law on the ballot, it lost because it's actually not very popular. That's the other thing. Is like a lot of their policies are not really all that popular. It's like they get voted in certain states because of like what they represent and the culture war, and because they piss Democrats off and stuff like that. But even their people don't really like a lot of the actual plans they have, especially economically. You know what I mean? So that makes it very frustrating too. I think that, like the midterms, usually in the midterms, the sitting party gets decimated, right? And this time around, it didn't happen as much. That they still took the House, but like it could have been so much worse. I was expecting it to be so much worse, and I think that Roe v. Wade, all that stuff, I think played a huge part in that. I think it motivated a lot of people to be engaged because they're mad, which they should be. So hopefully more of the same.
Not what you want to happen. What do you think is going to happen to Donald Trump?
Before he said it himself yesterday, I never thought he would actually get arrested or anything like that. I mean, I made a video about it and I said that in the video. It's like the whole time I've been like, that just don't happen in this country. Like a super rich and powerful white man like that, like that don't happen. They don't get arrested. They don't get walked off in handcuffs. Like we just don't do that here. They get away with stuff. I'm sorry. I want him to be locked up. I don't care. As far as what I want, I don't give a damn. Throw him off a cliff. I don't give a shit. Like whatever. But like in terms of my expectations, I never thought anything really would happen to him. But now that he himself is saying he's about to get indicted, hopefully that at least, but I still am pretty skeptical. Like as far as I will be stunned if he goes to like prison or jail or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like even if he gets indicted, I don't know. We'll just see. I mean, I'd be thrilled, but I'll also be surprised just because of this country's history with that sort of thing,
I agree. Trae, what would your ideal gig or professional activity involve?
I mean, I really, really want to get a TV show made eventually. Like that's because I'm also, like I said, I am a writer. Like all these shows I've sold, I've written the scripts for them. Like I've written a ton of scripts, and then that's also, you write a script and you really want to see it get made, then it doesn't. Yeah. That's hard. But also it's the golden age of TV. There's so much great TV out there. I'd like to be a part of that. So I want to do all that, but also I don't want to stop doing stand-up. I want to keep doing stand-up. I want to keep making specials. I have a special on Amazon right now. It's my first one. I want to make more of those and just keep going forward. But my ideal thing, I guess, would be a TV show that I'm both in and also like at least co-showrunner of, meaning like, I'm involved in the writing and the making of the thing while also being in it. Something that's like really my baby, Now,
would you have thought any of that was possible 10 years ago?
I mean, I always, like I said, my dad had a video store. And so like, I always wanted to do show business stuff, and it was stand-up comedy specifically from the time I was like 12. So I've always dreamed of it. And also I've always been a pretty confident person. So I had like hoped that eventually I could figure all that out. But I also knew, like I said, I'm pragmatic. I knew the odds were very much against me. So like, it's not that I wouldn't have believed it, but I'm insanely grateful to, to be where I am and to have the opportunities that I do, for sure.
Trae, thank you so much. You're such a kind, giving person. I appreciate that. And I'll talk to Natalie and Nathan to get you back here at the WellRED Comedy Club.
I'd love to come back. I love that club. I love Burlington. Thank you, Amber. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Trae Crowder. Oh, my goodness. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And now we've got a clip from Rocco Zamboni.
Alien mothership. What the? I'm telling you, I'm a little concerned because the Pentagon is telling us that there's an alien mothership floating around in space. It may be pointing laser cannons at us. I don't know. But the Pentagon, New York Times, even Fox News, that trustworthy bastard, has confirmed that there might be a mothership floating around in space. Now, I think the best thing for all of us to do is maybe pack a bag, pack some sunscreen, get your sunglasses, because we're going to be close to the sun when they come and get us. That's right, they're coming to get us. I think they want us to repopulate some planet full of hot chicks. I'm all for it. So as you can see, I'm dressed for the occasion. Now, I don't know what you guys got planned, but if you want to go hide in a bunker or something, maybe dig a hole in the backyard and hide in it until they leave, go ahead. I think it's dumb, but whatever. Just make sure you got enough SpaghettiOs to last you for a while. I think we're all in big trouble. But then again, I've seen some of these aliens, and you know who I'm talking about. among us this whole time. Oh, yeah. All right, I'm out of here. I suggest you guys go put gas in the car and start traveling somewhere where nobody gives a crap. Like, you know, West Virginia or something. All right, this is Rocco saying beep, bop, boop, or whatever language they're going to say on that planet that we're all going to. It's going to be a blast. All right, bye.
Thank you, Rocco. Let's go. All right, Rusty, come on in. And all right, hey, and let's show that caption and bring in Craig and see if we can have any captions for the picture. Show us that picture.
Sure, bud.
Ah, there it is.
I'm not the picture.
What do you have for the captions there, Craig?
We have a few good captions. Josh Pittman led it off with Tooth Daddy. And Johnny said, looks like it could use a good brushing.
Who's talking to who?
I know, really. And Malta Scott has a factoid for us that 89% of all stage teeth are cavity free.
Dude, I hope that's a Colgate factoid.
And then my favorite, I posted the classic vaudeville team, Molar and Moron.
Which one's Molar and which one's Moron?
I think the Molar is on the left.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you all for contributing that. And thank you very much, Craig, for filling in tonight for Rusty, who was filling in for Russell. Russell, we missed you, but we hope to see you next week. You know, I'm not sure who we have lined up for next week, but I bet you it's going to be a good show. So until then, see you next week, and let's bring on Book and Shug.
I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. What are you going on about now? I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us. I heard you. But you know that Jeffrey the Giraffe is unemployed and living under a bridge now, right? I think he gives neck jobs for money. Talk about a deep throat. Stop it. Where do you get these horrible lies? Where else? Fox News. Seriously, folks, Fox is scary. Read up on that Dominion lawsuit.